Edward Whitmore sat on the cold bench in the dim glow of the streetlights, still wearing the Santa suit from the charity event he had fled earlier. He'd intended to disappear into the quiet night, thinking no one would notice the lonely billionaire escaping his own life for a moment, but he hadn't expected the soft footsteps that approached him. Looking up, he saw a little girl, dark-skinned and shivering in her pink coat, her eyes filled with a courage that didn't match her tiny frame. She clutched a notebook to her chest, as if it held her entire world. With a trembling voice, she said, "Please, Santa, could you be my dad for just a day in school?" Edward felt the air leave his lungs as her words settled in his heart. It had been years since anyone asked him for anything with such sincerity. Not his board, not society, not even his past. Just a child, asking to not be alone. Lily Clark explained everything in slow, nervous breaths. The school's Dad and Me Day, the performances, the cheers, the children who would sit proudly beside their fathers. She tried to stay brave as she described how she planned to sit alone until she saw him. Her little voice wavered as she confessed she didn't want to be the only child with no one there. She didn't know that behind the beard sat the father she had never met, the man her mother never spoke of. She only saw a Santa who looked kind enough to ask for help. Edward watched her, stunned by the purity of her request, and something inside him cracked open. Without thinking, he nodded and said yes, promising to be there for her just one day, he thought. Just one day. The next morning, Edward arrived at the small community school, unsure why his heart was pounding. He had attended countless events, stood before presidents, investors, and millions online, yet nothing compared to the nervousness he felt walking to the school gates. Lily spotted him instantly and ran toward her with a joy so bright it startled him. She grabbed his hand tightly, as though afraid he would disappear. Children whispered, teachers stared, and Edward felt strangely exposed. But Lily's trust anchored him. She led him from classroom to classroom, showing him her drawings, her seat, her favorite books, and introducing him proudly as my dad just for today. Every time she said it, something warm tugged at his chest, something unfamiliar yet deeply welcome. When the activities began, Edward found himself cheering louder than he intended. He held Lily's backpack, helped her with her crafts, and joined her in the silly father-child games that filled the hall with laughter. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about business, meetings, profit margins, or headlines. He was just a man beside a child who looked at him like he mattered. When Lily leaned on his shoulder during story time, Edward felt a peace he hadn't known since childhood. He didn't understand why he cared so deeply after only a few hours, but he knew the thought of leaving her life again already hurt more than it should. When the school day ended, Lily tugged his sleeve and whispered that her mom wanted to meet him. Edward followed her to a modest house, where Amelia Clark opened the door, confusion washing over her face when she saw a full-grown Santa standing awkwardly on her doorstep. Lily proudly announced, "Mom, my Santa Dad." Amelia blinked, struggling to make sense of it. She had never allowed strange men near her daughter, but Lily's spark was different, brighter, happier. Edward removed his beard, revealing a face she recognized from years ago, one she never expected to see again. Her breath caught, and the world seemed to freeze as she whispered, "Edward." He nodded, guilt and shock clouding his eyes. Amelia's emotions broke in waves: anger, disbelief, heartbreak, fear. She had raised Lily on her own, carrying the weight of abandonment and disappointment without ever letting her daughter feel it. Seeing Edward there, wealthy, powerful, and suddenly present, threatened the fragile world she had built. She wanted to shut the door, protect Lily from the man who never knew she existed. But Lily's excitement kept her frozen. Edward apologized in a voice that trembled, insisting he hadn't known. Amelia watched him cautiously, unsure she could trust a man who lived in a world so far from her own. But Lily's innocent hand clung to both of them, silently begging for peace neither adult knew how to give. Over the next days, Edward returned again and again. He attended Lily's rehearsal practices, helping her memorize her lines and clapping each time she performed for him. Amelia watched from the doorway, conflicted. She expected Edward to grow bored, to show up once and disappear, but he kept coming back, early, eager, and with a gentleness she didn't expect from a billionaire. He learned Lily's favorite meals, her bedtime songs, and even how she liked her hot chocolate. He listened to her stories with the kind of attention Amelia had long convinced herself men didn't know how to give. The more he showed up, the harder it became for Amelia to maintain her emotional distance. Edward discovered unexpected joy in their small home. The quiet dinners, the mismatched plates, the laughter that echoed despite their struggles. It felt more real than any luxury he owned. Lily became the center of his world without him noticing, and Amelia became the gravity that kept him there. He found himself lingering after Lily fell asleep, talking with Amelia for hours about life, regret, dreams, and the strange miracle that had brought them back together. The warmth of those nights softened him, grounding him in a way no amount of wealth ever had. But the peace didn't last. When a passerby recognized Edward at the school gate, the news spread like wildfire. Soon paparazzi gathered outside Amelia's home, flashing cameras and shouting questions that terrified Lily. The media spun their own stories, claiming Amelia had trapped a billionaire, that Edward had been hiding a secret child, that the little family was a scandal waiting to explode. Amelia panicked, retreating inside herself. She had lived her entire life outside the gaze of the wealthy. Now she was a headline, a target, a rumor. She feared Edward's world, feared the chaos it brought, feared that Lily would be crushed in the process. Edward tried to shield them, using his influence to push the media back. But Amelia's fear ran deeper. She accused him of bringing trouble into their lives, of not belonging in their world. Edward begged her to let him stay, insisting he would protect them, but Amelia's heart was trembling. She had survived heartbreak once. She was terrified of surviving again. She told him to leave, to step back until the chaos settled. Edward's heart shattered as he walked away from the woman and child who had become his entire world. Days passed in painful silence. Edward couldn't sleep, couldn't focus, couldn't breathe without thinking of Lily's laughter or Amelia's quiet strength. His mansion felt colder, emptier, suffocating. Meanwhile, Amelia tried to convince herself she had done the right thing. But the house felt hollow, without Edward's presence. Lily asked for him daily, her little heart confused by his sudden disappearance. Amelia held back tears each time she said, "He's busy, my love," even though she wasn't sure if he would ever return. The separation revealed the truth. What they had built was no longer temporary. They had become a family, even if none of them had dared to say it. One night, Lily found Amelia crying in the kitchen and asked softly, "Mummy, did I do something wrong?" Amelia broke, hugging her tightly, whispering that none of it was her fault. Lily then said the one thing Amelia couldn't ignore, "Santa chose us, Mum. People don't choose things they don't love." That night, Amelia made a choice. She would fight for the life they almost had, even if fear tried to pull her back. She reached out to Edward, leaving a shaky voicemail asking him to come home, not to the house, but to them. When Edward arrived, breathless and unsure, Amelia opened the door with trembling hands. Their eyes locked, heavy with unspoken apologies, love, and longing. Lily ran into Edward's arms, clinging to him with a happiness so pure he nearly broke down. Amelia watched them, her heart swelling with emotions she had suppressed for too long. She told Edward she was scared, terrified, of his world and the exposure it brought. Edward promised her he would protect them, not as a billionaire, but as a man who finally understood what mattered in life. Amelia listened, tears streaking her cheeks, and slowly nodded, choosing courage over fear. From that night, Edward stepped into their lives with full commitment. He cut back on his work, assigned trusted staff to handle the media, and devoted his time to Lily and Amelia. He cooked breakfast terribly, burned toast regularly, learned to braid Lily's hair after many failed attempts, and walked her to school proudly every morning. Amelia watched him transform, not in wealth or status, but in heart. He wasn't pretending anymore. He wasn't Lily's Santa dad for a day. He was becoming her father in every sense of the word. The day of Lily's school performance arrived, the day everything began. The hall buzzed with excitement as parents filled the seats. Lily stood backstage, peeking through the curtain nervously. But when she spotted Edward and Amelia holding hands in the crowd, her fear melted. When it was her turn, she stepped onto the stage, voice shaky but determined. Edward's eyes filled with tears as he watched the little girl who had changed his life. When Lily finished, the applause erupted, but Edward stood the tallest, clapping with pride so fierce it made Lily beam. After the show, Lily ran to them, shouting, "Did I do well?" Edward scooped her up, whispering, "You were perfect." Amelia stood beside them, her heart overflowing with love as she saw the family they had become. The moment was simple, ordinary, and yet more magical than anything Edward had experienced as a billionaire. For the first time, he understood that happiness had never been missing from his life. He had simply been looking for it in the wrong places. That evening, Edward took Amelia to the park where they first met again. The bench where Lily had made her Christmas wish still sat under the streetlight. Edward knelt, not with a fancy ring or grand gesture, but with sincerity woven into every word. He said he didn't want to pretend, didn't want to be in and out of their lives. He wanted to stay, for good. Amelia's eyes filled with tears as she realized how completely he had chosen them. She nodded, whispering yes, and Edward pulled her into a warm embrace. Lily, who had been watching from a few steps away, squealed in excitement, hugging them both tightly. Months later, they held a small wedding, quiet, intimate, and filled with joy. No extravagance, no flash, just people who loved them. Lily walked down the aisle holding Edward's hand, proudly claiming him as her dad. Edward vowed not just to Amelia, but also to Lily, promising to be the father she had wished for that snowy night. When the ceremony ended, they danced together in laughter, warmth, and the certainty that they had built something real. In the years that followed, their home became alive with happiness. Edward learned the beauty of simple mornings, packed lunches, messy art projects, bedtime stories, and the comfort of love that wasn't bought but built. Amelia found peace in partnership, in support she had once believed she didn't deserve. Lily grew up with two parents who adored her, one who had raised her with strength, and another who had walked into her life in a Santa suit and stayed willingly forever. What began as a child's desperate request, "Please, Santa, could you be my dad for just one day?" became the miracle that changed all three of their lives. Edward didn't become Lily's father for a day. He became her father for life. And together, they proved a truth that echoed through every memory they created. Family is not defined by blood or birth, but by love, presence, and the courage to choose each other. I'm glad you enjoyed this story. Don't forget to follow, share, and comment your thought about the story. See you in the next story.